Welcome to KSOK Uncensored. Last week, Biden signed an executive order that makes as many as 3,000 American reservists available to go to Europe in support of NATO efforts in Ukraine. What I'm hoping for today, just to start off our interview with tonight's guest, we have Captain Bob Carey. Bob, I would love for you to help us civilians and even those who have served our military, help us understand why this executive order is appropriate. And if it's not, help us understand why this is happening and why only 40% of conservatives are up in arms about the money that we are sending to Ukraine.
Well, thanks for having me on, and I appreciate the time. And, I'm retired Navy, but I spent the last 22 years of my time in the Navy as a reservist. But post 9/11, I was recalled 4 times, 5 actually, and went down range 3 of those. And so, I understood what that was for. I'm having great difficulty understanding why we need to recall 3,000 reservists to go to Europe. Now they're not going to go into Ukraine; they're going to go to the NATO partner countries, but the NATO ally countries. But still, I mean, what is so necessary to send? And it's sort of a pittance of a number, 3,000. What is so necessary to send these men and women downrange like this? And I think a large part of it is because the military just can't recruit or keep people in the military. The Army is going to make about 75% of its recruiting goals. The Navy is going to make about 65%. And the Marines, I think, are also going to make maybe 85%. They're giving bonuses for people to enlist that are greater than their first year's annual income.
Wow.
Because they're having such a hard time getting people to join the military. And so I think that's a large part of it, is that, that's why they're looking to recall these reservists and send them over there, because they just don't have enough people in the military right now.
Right.
As far as, I don't know if you wanted to follow up on that at all first, or if you want me to shift over to Ukraine.
No, feel free to shift over.
So on Ukraine, this was a difficult one for me. I mean, the biggest problem with the Biden administration is that they're giving just enough money and just enough arms to Ukraine so they don't get slaughtered, but not enough to win. And they're also not using their good offices to try to broker some type of agreement. I mean, where's the Teddy Roosevelt moment of, brokering the peace deal between Russia and Japan and ending the Russo-Japanese War? The guy got the Nobel Peace Prize for it. And so it makes me wonder as to what is the end game here. Now, and the other thing is that no one has really, made a hard, brass tacks, bare-knuckled national security discussion about why Ukraine is important. Right. There are some potential reasons. I mean, I think China is going to look at how we react in Ukraine and use that as a proxy of how we'd react if they invaded Taiwan. And the fact of the matter is that Taiwan is important. The shipping in the South China Sea, between the Straits of Taiwan and the Philippines, and the Straits of Taiwan and China, that supplies South Korea and Japan, those are crucially important. We've made far greater promises to Taiwan than we've ever made to Ukraine. When we were expanding NATO into, Poland and the Baltic states and the Slavic states, there was a specific discussion about whether, Ukraine would join or not. And at the time, they're like, no, they're too corrupt. And now, the Zelensky government is a much more legitimate government than previous governments of the of Ukraine, but that's not a high bar. The previous governments of Ukraine were a pretty darn low bar.
Yes.
as a Michigander, that's like saying, well, at least it's a better school than Ohio State. But sorry, had to get that
You
in
were
there.
able to work it
Uh,
in. That was the one objective. Let me work in Ohio State. Oh my goodness. Yeah, and it's wild. I live in a heavily Slavic area in the Pacific Northwest, and a lot of Slavic people are conservatives, but it's wild because I've been pretty outspoken on social media about I don't feel like we should be giving a dime, especially to a non-NATO country, someone that doesn't pay in, we don't pay out. And I've been very outspoken about that, and I've received some backlash from conservatives in the area who are Ukrainian, and they love to fill my inbox with all these reasons I should be supporting Ukraine and how Zelensky's legit, yada yada. Never going to change my mind, but it is wild when I look at recent reports where it shows that only 40% of conservatives are stating, and this just got to 40%. It was a lot lower before, are stating that they're frustrated with the money that we are sending to Ukraine. So it's about damn time that we've even hit that number. But to me, it should be way closer to 95% of our US tax dollars going that direction. It sounds like we're both in a quandary as far as why we're sending money to Ukraine in the first place. I want to ask you, I know that Biden signed an executive order to send 1,500 troops to the southern border, rightfully so. What difference would it make if that 3,000, instead of going to Europe, if it went to the southern border also? What difference would that make, if any? And why are we focusing so much more on Ukraine than our wide open southern border?
well, what I do know is that Ukraine is a passionate issue for many in the Democratic Party and amongst the Democratic base, and they view this as sort of a moral imperative to strike down Russian war crimes, etc. And if that's the case, why aren't we in Yemen? Why aren't we back in Afghanistan? Why aren't we down in Syria? There's plenty of places that this sort of stuff is going on. And to go back, I mean, what has not been well made is the national security argument for Ukraine. I think it possibly could, but it's no one's been doing it well so far. As far as the southern border, the fact that we're going to take 3,000 reservists and National Guardsmen and send them to Europe when we're not going to send them down to the border, that's remarkable. And the other thing that you got to know about the difference between the National Guard and the active military is that the active military is not allowed to enforce any domestic civil law. It's called posse comitatus,
Okay.
and it's a strict. I mean, we were trained on this all the time. We're not even allowed. We're not even allowed to like direct traffic. Okay,
Wow.
active duty military. Now, the National Guard is a state force, and so
Mm.
they are allowed to enforce domestic law, and they can enforce state law. And it's only when they're federalized and brought under the federal banner that they now fall under posse comitatus and can't do that. So, to the extent that we're going to be taking 3,000 3,000 reservists and guardsmen, sending them to Europe, and not sending, we're denying ourselves the ability to use those National Guardsmen and women on the border, because
Right.
all that the active duty military can do is like provide sensors and observation and logistics support, but we can't be on the border. I mean, the active
Wow.
duty military, they can't arrest anyone. They can't support, they can't engage in any type of law enforcement. Only the National Guard can do that, and only when it's part of the state.
Wow. I did not
And
know
Governor
that.
and Governor
That
Abbott,
is
yeah, and Governor Abbott in Texas has been doing that a lot.
right, right. Oh my gosh. You know what I just saw that he did that he's getting a lot of flack from Mexican officials is those floating buoys that have some spikes on them that are acting as a deterrent. And what's funny is Mexican officials are so concerned that it's going to disrupt the river flow that they've filed a complaint against the United States, and they have surveyors out there making sure that it's not impeding the flow and making sure we're not violating a treaty from the 60s. I mean, it's just insane. And
That's a
it's
straw
so
man.
wild.
That's a,
Right, right,
that's I mean, and there are plenty of people in the United States that believe that borders should be open and that no one should be denied the opportunity to cross the border and seek a better life. I mean, look, if someone's like in a war zone or someone's being hunted
right,
down because of their political beliefs, yeah, we should give them we should look at giving them asylum or parole status.
right.
But because a country consistently makes bad decisions as far as its economics and they can't get a good job,
Yeah,
that's not our fault, and that's not our
right.
responsibility to solve by giving
Right.
them jobs in the United States.
Yeah, exactly. I think of that even within the United States where there's people. I live in a very blue state. I'm behind enemy lines, as Juan likes to say. And there are a lot of people fleeing blue states versus getting involved locally and fighting to make a difference and to wake people up, which is what I'm doing. I'll tell you what, it's exhausting, but somebody has to do it. Otherwise, to your point, we're Mexico. If you don't actually take a stand and work to make it right, you're just going to fall to the wayside, which many, especially coastal cities and states, have done. I want to pivot to a topic that's really near and dear to your heart, and that is veterans and their rights, their Second Amendment rights. I was doing some research before our interview, and it's wild the numbers that show that so many veterans that have struggles with PTSD are afraid to go and seek help for their PTSD because they could get their gun rights taken away. Talk to us about this.
Okay, so I'm going to get a little nerdy here because
I love it.
it's not how you think this would happen. The
Okay.
VA has a program called the fiduciary program. And if the VA thinks that you are no longer mentally capable of handling your veteran benefits and your finances, they will refer you to the fiduciary program and they'll assign you a fiduciary that will handle that for you. That happens all the time with older Americans, and their
Right.
children start taking over things for them. But that's not where it stops. The VA then says, oh, well, now that you can't handle your finances anymore, and it doesn't apply to all of their finances, only to their VA benefits. Now that you can't handle your VA benefits anymore, we now consider you a mental defective under the Brady
Wow.
Handgun Violence Prevention Act of 1993, and we're going to report you to the Department of Justice. And over 260,000 veterans have been reported by the Department of Veterans Affairs to the Department of Justice, who then tells them, oh, you're a mental defective. You're no longer allowed to own or possess a firearm.
Okay.
And there's no due process in this. The VA system doesn't go before a court like everywhere else does. You got to get a court
Right.
order to find someone incompetent. No, the VA, any rating official, any healthcare provider can just call up the fiduciary office and say, "Hey, I got one here. I don't think he can handle his finance."
Wow.
And then the VA
Wow.
will send a letter to that veteran, and they have 60 days to prove that they are competent. Not that the VA has to prove the veteran incompetent. The burden of proof is on the veteran to prove that they are competent.
Right.
And so there's no due process.
And how does
And so I
one
was
do
just,
that?
what's that now?
How does one prove that they are competent? What is the measuring plate for the VA? And do you have percentages of out of X amount that actually send in evidence to prove that they are competent? How many are actually accepted?
Of last year, I think so far this year, there's been about 8,000,
Wow.
and
Small number.
and less than 10 have been found to be
Wow.
competent. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, and so at this hearing yesterday, the VA officials were saying, well, we realize this is not a program for gun control, but it still has the effect. And so therefore, and
Right.
we don't know, but we think that it reduces veteran suicides and we think that it reduces veteran violent activities. And they're asked,
Mm.
what's the proof of that? Well, we just think it.
Right,
Um,
right. Sounds about right to the
and,
government.
and they're completely willing to take away veterans gun rights. Now I'm going to say one thing as well. There are no Second Amendment rights. The rights to own and possess firearms, to keep and bear arms, pre-exists the Constitution, was around for millennia before, I'd say, all of creation. The right to protect yourself, protect your own liberty. And the Second Amendment is simply a limitation on the federal government being able to impose upon that fundamental and inalienable right. Due process, same thing. Fundamental and inalienable right. The Fifth and 14th Amendments, all they do is help is limit the government from being able to get in there. So I run a group called the National Defense Committee, and I got the chance to be able to testify on this yesterday on behalf of the National Defense Committee. So this is pretty cool opportunity.
That is. And how do you feel that was received?
It was very partisan. You know, and I don't even know how many people are actually listening. I think they all had their talking points well before they came into the hearing room. And we could have said, I could have said to the Ohio representative, "Them go blue," and they probably wouldn't have caught it because they had their talking points they had to get out.
Right. I know how that is. Everyone's has their objective that they're looking to put through, but I'm happy that you had that chance, and hopefully there was a recording of that so that can be shared around. I'm not sure if you're aware of that or not.
It's on YouTube. I'll send you guys the link.
Yeah, let's do that, and we'll put it in the show notes. I think that'd be great. I want to talk about the stabilizing braces that were first designed and intended to help combat wounded veterans fire large format pistols. I have notes here to make sure I keep the terminology correct here. That currently, I believe it's ATF 2021-089F. I'm sure you're well aware of that. Talk to us about stabilizing braces and how they're pretty much now illegal across the board unless you only had like a 90-day window to go refile your gun. I feel like the number of people that did that is very minute. What is going on with the stabilizing braces?
ATFE basically took it upon itself to become the legislature, the judiciary branch, and the executive branch by defining, basically they used the Gun Control Act of the 1920s. And this bill, this law was, back in the days of prohibition and Tommy guns and all the gangsters. And so they prohibited, like submachine guns. And so what basically ATF is saying is that, well, you attach a pistol brace, and so you have your normal pistol, but if you're a military, I was trained, to use the Weaver grip or the standoff grip, but you're taught to use both hands. I'm a lefty, by the way. That's why you're taught to use both hands. And if you don't have that second hand, the recoil may very well, fly it out of your hand. So the pistol brace actually attaches to your, let's see if I can get in there. Oh, whatever. Attaches to your arm, your upper arm, and then and you strap it on, and then it attaches to the pistol stock. And so it gives you a lot more control because with your one arm. And yeah, it's, but the ATF is basically reinterpreting the law to say, well, that looks an awful lot like a short-barreled rifle, and it's like, really, where'd you come up with that? And this is simply about trying to figure out ingenious new bureaucratic ways to take away people's guns. But yeah, the fine is like $250,000, and it's like 15 years of prison time.
Wow, that is intense. Yeah.
So there's something called the Congressional Review Act that members of Congress can say, "Hey, we don't like this new regulation, and we're gonna strike it down." And it's a law like any other law, and it passed the House. And it passed the House with 4 Democrats voting with the Republicans, and so it passed through, and then it got to the Senate. And it died on purely partisan lines. And we thought that maybe Senators Sinema and Manchin may vote, with the bill, given the strong hunting and gun cultures in their states. But nope, they stuck with the Democrats.
Wow, that's very unfortunate, and we need to make sure that they do not get voted back in during the next midterms. It's really sad to watch. I'm here in Oregon, and Measure 114 was just deemed constitutional after it's been held up in court for over a year. And it's just really sad to see. We thought there was hope because half of Oregon, if people, I always get painted with the brush of you're a liberal because you live in the state of Oregon. If people actually broke it down by county, they would see how wrong they are. But it's very unfortunate for our state, a sad ruling. I want to pivot over to you're a big DeSantis guy. And I told you before we started recording that my base is heavily for Trump, though I do have some that feel DeSantis is a better fit right now, just given everything that Trump is going through and the labels that he's come under. Talk to us about why I have some terms here I want you to help me dispel. He's been labeled a rhino globalist, a Bush Cheney Republican, and giving Jeb Bush vibes. What is going on with DeSantis, and why do you feel he's earned these labels?
Okay, so I worked at the Republican National Committee in 2014 and 2016. I ran their military veteran program, voter program, and we brought out 2.8 million additional veteran voters to the polls in 2016 compared to 2012. And President Trump won the veteran vote by 27 points, 61-34, the greatest margin ever. I mean, John
Amazing.
McCain only won it by 10 points. And
Yeah.
but then in 2020, he only won it by about 7 points. So I think that has to do more with the lack. I mean, when we ran this program in 2016, we ran it on the ground. We hired 50 full-time veterans around the country to reach out to other veterans, and we
Right.
really engaged. If I saw one more Blue Angels air show, I was going to be able to jump into the number 4 jet and fly it myself. But
Oh my
I met a lot
gosh.
of veterans there. I met a ton of veterans there, and they were appreciative that we were out there in 2015, early 2016. It wasn't at the very end. So look, I supported President Trump in 2016. I supported him in 2020, and if he's the Republican nominee, I'll support him. But I like Ron DeSantis. Here's the thing about Governor DeSantis. He knows how to use government power well. He knows how
Right.
to, he's effective. He knows how to use the levers of government to get things done. He knows the legislative process. He was a member of Congress. He knows the regulatory process. He's a governor. He knows the budgetary process. And he happens to be the commander in chief of the third largest National Guard force in the United States.
Right.
And he's a veteran. Now, granted, he was a Navy lawyer. And when I think of a Navy lawyer, I just think of someone coming to tell me that I've done something wrong.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but he went downrange with the SEALs. He was the lawyer for all the SEALs down over in over in Iraq, and they don't give out medals easily. They gave that guy a Bronze Star. Um, the combination of his being a veteran, his being a governor, Hurricane Ian. I've seen so many governors destroy their political careers over not knowing how to respond to a natural disaster. He
Right.
handled that really well. That building
Right.
the bridge to Sanibel Island in like 10 days. I mean,
Amazing.
the Army Corps of Engineers doesn't work that fast.
Right.
So he knows how to get things done. People say that he doesn't do retail politics well because he's not personable enough. I'm sorry, I mean, yes, I'd like to have a beer with the president, but is that I'm going to vote for him? No, I'm going to vote for who I want to be my president because I think that they're going to do the things I think need to be done with our government.
Right. I'm at the point where I want someone who can unite or reunite the party. I feel like we're quite divided. And, doing what I do, I see conservatives eat their own. I see it all the time. So I'm looking to reunite the party, and I want someone that can win. So that's where I'm at. How do you see the primaries playing out?
Look, I mean, Yeah, I mean, most polls show him well down at this point, but you know, say what you will about Senator McCain, but he got slaughtered in Iowa and New Hampshire, and he totally redid his campaign and his staff, and he came back and won the nomination. And I think if he had, but for his saying some stupid things about the 2008 housing bubble burst, he probably would have gotten elected. But the fact of the matter is that it's way too early to be calling doing any predictions at this point. I mean, heck, in October of 2016, everyone was saying that Secretary Clinton was going to win the presidency. So
Yeah, right. We don't know.
Right.
I'm not going to be angry if DeSantis is the one chosen. At this point, I feel like he's definitely, in my opinion, next best in line besides Trump. I know Trump has a lot going on right now, and there are people that are never Trumpers on the right side. So again, it's going to be a really interesting race to follow.
I'm not a never Trumper. I mean, I worked to get the guy elected.
Yeah, exactly. No, but there are plenty, and I feel like it's mainly women my age and a little older that are your housewife, as they like to say, white housewife. Apparently, he's offended a number of us. I don't get offended very easily, so I absolutely love his savagery. But I feel like Ron DeSantis has an element of savage also, which I really enjoy. So we'll see how that plays
he knows
out.
How to get it done. He
does.
knows how to get it done.
I liked him. I didn't know Trump was going to run. This is before I thought he was going to run in 24. And I had a hat made that was DeSantis 24, Make America Florida. So I like the guy. I do. There has been some questionable things brought to the surface that people they look at it a couple times, not quite sure what he's doing. But I'm interested to see how this ends. And I want to know if you can share with folks your website. Again, I know veterans that are supporting DeSantis. Can you share that website out?
Yeah, it's called readyforron.com. Readyforron.com.
Perfect. I love how Ron rhymes with .com. It's such a wonderful play. Easy to remember. Excellent.
And then National Defense Committee is nationaldefensecommittee.com. And then there's also, for people that want to get involved in the political side of things, there's a veteran-related PAC that I'm involved with called National Defense PAC, and that's nationaldefensepac.org.
And it's all very important. And I know we have less than a minute here. But what do you say to people that are in states like mine, Oregon, and they're disgusted? Do they stay and fight, or should they flee like a lot of people are?
Well, look, live where you want to live, and then work on the local level. I mean, we got Larry Hogan. Right. I mean, say what you will about Larry Hogan. He was better than the alternative. And we got him I live in Maryland, and we got him as governor here. We just elected Governor Youngkin in Virginia a couple of years ago. Things change. But I would say work at the local level. Work on your school district elections, work on your mayoral elections, work on your county commission elections.
Yes, thank you. All right, Captain Bob Carey, thank you so much for coming on KSOK Uncensored. Everyone go find him and support. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. We'll see you guys next Thursday. Always a great guest on KSOK Uncensored.